What's going on, y'all? It's Ryan here with Get Rich or Die Mowing, and in this episode, we're going to talk about something that's not discussed super often, and that is how to give good, accurate quotes and bids so you can land the most amount of customers and maximize the most amount of profits. Stick around. All right, so I'm going to take y'all through a step-by-step process of how I pull up to the customer's house, greet the customer, inspect the property, do some quick math, and give them the most accurate bid so I'm not costing myself money in the long run. Because you have to think, even if you're only off on that first bid by, let's say it's $10, okay? You times that by how many visits are you going to make to that property. If it's a weekly property, maybe it's 36 visits a year. That is $360 in 1 year from one yard that you have cost yourself for no reason except that you did the bid wrong. But first things first, as soon as you step out of your truck, assume the customer is already watching you. Don't be putting out a cigarette. Don't tuck your shirt in. You should be ready to go. You should look the part. Once I have arrived on property and I make sure that I have my business card with me, I have a notepad with me that I'm all squared away, I don't do any walking around the customer's property. They might have kids in the backyard. They might have dogs out. No, I go straight to the front door. I greet them. I make sure that I'm friendly, presentable. You're going to either make or break your sale in the first 15 seconds of somebody meeting you. That's the actual sale. You're selling yourself. So make sure that you look the part. Make sure that you're a trustworthy looking individual. Then you say, "Hi, I'm Ryan with such and such company. I'm here to mow. I heard that you had some grass that you needed mowing or some hedges done or whatever." And then you ask them if it's okay if you can take a look around their property. You also want to ask them exactly what they want done. They may have a laundry list of things. They may only want mowing. You may recognize the chance that you can do an upsell, which is always a huge thing. So this is probably the most important part of the entire bid. The first 15 seconds, if the customer chooses to trust you or if they've already got it in their head, even if this guy says the yard is going to be free, I'm going to go get a few more bids. It's critical. Once I've already met the customer and greeted them, and I've gotten permission to check out their property to get them a bid, the very last thing that I always ask is, how do I access the backyard? Is there going to be a small gate that I'm going to have to use a push mower on? Or is there a double gate or a wider gate that I'm not seeing? Maybe it's hidden around back, or maybe there's a back alley. It can drastically change the price of your estimate. Now comes the yard inspection, guys. I'm going to start with this property because it's a good sized property. As you can see, a lot of wide open spaces, a lot of grass that's going to need mowing. It's actually about 2 acres. How do I know it's 2 acres? It's because it's my property. Clearly, it's still the middle of winter. I'm not doing a lot of bids at the moment for mowing, so this is a simulation. However, I'm going to treat it as though it were a real customer calling. One of the first things that you'll want to look at is actually the type of grass. Is this something that's going to need weekly mowing, bi-weekly mowing? Is there a lot of weeds? Is it going to hold water? Look at all the little crevices of the yard. Something interesting in my yard is I have these right here. You can see that. That is a crawdad hole. We have a crawdad problem. During the peak season, I'll have hundreds of these little guys all over my yard. Almost impossible to treat and get rid of. They spawn crazy fast. Hate the way they look. I've tried different things to get rid of them. It's just kind of a part of the property because my property, as you can see, slopes downhill, which means I'm pretty much always in a flood zone. Crawdads are going to go to whoever's got the lowest land. They love the wet soil. So I'm the winner when it comes to crawdads. The reason I hate them is because they get clogged up on the underside of your mower deck to where you can barely even mow correctly, and you have to stop afterwards, scrape off all the mud and stuff. So that's all time. It's all stuff that you have to take into account, take into consideration. So when I mow my own yard, I actually wait till it's usually the last yard on a Friday because I know that I'm going to have to stop afterwards and be down for a half an hour for cleaning reasons. Next thing that you got to look at are the obstacles. It's not really the size of the yard. As we've talked about earlier, mowing, it's really the easiest part of the job. One of the hardest parts is the obstacles. My yard doesn't have a lot of them. It's got a few trees. It's got, what's that right there? That's a biggie. That's a fence. It's that fence line. You're going to have to weed eat that. It's all the stuff that you're going to have to work around. There's a tree over there, shrub right there, pocket of trees over there. There's a sign out by the road, another tree over there. This is all stuff that you're going to have to work around, and I'm going to show you a little bit more here in a minute when we go to the backyard. But these are all things that you should be clocking. You should be walking up to the house, seeing how much weed eating is going to be necessary. And as I already mentioned in this video, check out the moisture level. Is this going to be a yard that drains good? Is there a French drain? Or is this going to be a yard that holds water? Is it going to be in a low spot? This is probably the worst part of my house, is that we are in a low spot. And even though we do have drains, it still doesn't even matter. I'll show you right here. It hasn't snowed here for a week, and yet we still have standing water. This is all just soaking wet. Got all this water built up because when my roof melts from snow, it goes right down the gutter, right to here. Bad design, but it's what it is. It basically means that I've got a wet yard. If this were a customer's yard, I would be very concerned, because if I try to take a 0-turn mower and go right through here right now, I'm going to have ruts a foot deep, and I'm probably not going to have a customer long. It's all stuff that you should be watching out for. Something else to be aware of is all the edging. Edging adds time. Time equals money. We can see right here, we're going to have to edge all along the sidewalks. All this right here. It all gets edged. And then we have stuff that's not so obvious. Clearly you can see that you have a driveway that's fairly long that's going to need edging on both sides going all the way up. But you have right here a drain that's kind of caked in ice and leaves at the moment. But under this is a drain, which means the lawnmower is not going to be able to mow this whole area here because it's a weird dip. It divots down in there. It's not going to look right. So you're going to have to weed eat that. That's not a huge deal, right? But it adds another 20 seconds, possibly longer if you're not experienced. That's all stuff that adds up. Now, as we come over here, I see our first question mark. Where does the property line end? If this weren't my house, I would probably think that the property line is the tree line here, right? You can kind of see where during the spring and summer you would have a line of trees. Looks like it's grass right up to that point. It's actually not. This is why you have to ask the customer. Always ask ahead. This, where I'm standing on this side, is not actually my property. The property line between me and my neighbor is basically where that orange sign is right there. You can see that other older line of trees there. Probably used to be a fence there at some point. Anyway, that's the property line. If I were to mow this area over here to the right, my neighbor would probably appreciate it, but my customer might not. That's an extra time and effort that I would not be getting paid for, because that's not the customer's property. Something else I recommend bringing with you on these estimates is a tape measure. Here we see gate number 1. Not sure if it shows up in the video, but it is not big enough for a riding mower to fit through. My riding mower is a 52-inch cutting width. Total, it's about 55 inches wide. This gate's probably close to 32 or so. So it's not going to work. If I had a tape measure, I could whip that bad boy out and know, nope, not the right size. So we know that the gate on one side is not going to work. So we have to look for another option if the customer wasn't quite sure. In the meantime, as we're walking around, we've already seen the front yard. There's really nothing else to see here. So we need to keep our eyes peeled for potential ways that we can offer extra services. Right here, I notice a flower bed that's looking pretty sad, if I'm being honest. But what is lacking? Mulch. It's going to need mulch in springtime. We could offer that service. The customer can always say no, but it never hurts to ask. As we come upon the larger gate here, this is what we were looking for. This is going to make it a lot easier knowing that we have an access point to get a larger mower through here. If we had a tape measure, we could be absolutely sure that we would have room to make it through. But when you see these fence rows, sometimes it's beneficial to just walk them, because you can really tell how big they are, how long it's going to take you to weed eat around them if you walk them. Sometimes when you're a long way away and you see them, it doesn't look like it's going to be a lot. But when you factor in that you're going to have to do the outside and the inside, just walking them can give you really a better picture of how long it's going to take. Okay, we've made it through the gate, and we're on to the backyard, which is currently still covered in snow. It's been a week, still covered in snow. and we see obstacle number 2. I don't know if it translates that well in the video, but I have a creek that runs through my backyard to the fence. Basically, the water rolls down here, and over the years, over the last 50 years, it's formed a creek. And I can tell you that right now, it looks like it's pretty well cleaned out. But in springtime and summertime, it's going to have all types of little shrubs, poison ivy, vines, grass, all sorts of randomness that's going to grow on these banks here. I can't mow any of it. It would all have to have a trimmer and somebody that is pretty sure-footed who wants to get down there and wrangle snakes and falling on their head and whatever else. This is something that would need to be talked about with the customer before you give them a bid. This could affect price drastically, but you don't want to give them a number thinking, well, this is obviously extra. The customer is not going to expect me to be down here in the creek when they actually are. It's part of the yard. So this is something that you would definitely need to ask about. As we walk along the fence row, I can see that they have, and by they, I mean me, has chicken wire connected to the fence to keep dogs in. Weed eaters do not like chicken wire. So if we have grass growing all along here during the spring, and I'm going to have to weed eat this, I'm going to end up either tearing up their fence or going through a lot of weed eater string. What I would personally do is ask the customer how they would feel about me doing a one-time spray along the fence line of poison to wipe out weeds for the rest of the season. And I would give them a pretty good price on that because it's going to save you work and effort in the end. All right, making our way through. And one of the main things that I'm noticing is as I'm walking, the ground is still spongy here in the backyard. It's not soaking wet, but it is moist. It's damp. That's going to be an issue. You also have areas right there that don't have a lot of grass. Right there, you can see it slopes down a little bit, and it's going to pool up right in there. That's going to be a problem area. May have to use a weed eater on a lot of this throughout most of the year, especially in springtime during the rainy months. Besides that, there's a trampoline. That's an obstacle that I'm going to have to work around. There's the fire pit area with 6 poles. That's going to have grass and weeds growing around it in spring and summer. That's going to be a little extra. You got a tree over there, and then you got a back corner over here. All of that stuff you'll have to weed eat. That all adds time. It needs to be clocked in your head mentally. You're keeping a running tab of how long it's going to take you to get this property done. As we continue our way around, I see an opportunity to sell something else. I see a flower bed with mulch, but no flowers. It's a possible sale there. You could offer flowers, you could offer ground cover. There's a lot of things there. The rest of the yard looks like it's pretty well open. Very icy at the moment, but let's just act like it's full of lush green grass. We got a chain link fence that goes through this portion. Gonna have to weed eat that. Got a patio that we're gonna have to blow off. Gonna have to make sure that we don't get grass clippings over here in the gravel with the decorative stone. More possible mulch needed over here. Want to ask the customer that. Some hedges here. Looks like they've been trimmed nice and neatly by yours truly. More mulch. And I want to take you over here to this corner. There's a few things I want to show you. Stuff that you might not see at first. One is this little area. Yeah, hedges and stuff. But you got a sidewalk here. Little sidewalk, a little skinny sidewalk back, probably built in the 1970s when people were a lot skinnier. I certainly cannot fit on this now. But that's going to have to be edged. But then I'm going to take you right over here. Look behind the fence if you can see it. There's my practice area for my bow when I try to act like a badass. Anyway, let's look at this back here behind the fence. So the property of mine does not end at the fence. You might think it does, but it does not. It actually goes back to this creek that goes all the way around my property. Thing is during the spring and summer, there's little vines and weeds that grow back here and they get out of control. And if I don't either spray it with poison or hit it with the weed eater occasionally, I'm going to have all sorts of critters back here. and it's going to start to grow into my fence, which I don't want. The customer may just assume that you're going to handle that because it's part of their property and you didn't ask about property lines. That's why you have to always ask. You have to always know exactly what you're bidding on, because all of that, zoom out, all of that has to be treated every once in a while. Not every single visit, but it's going to have something done to it, or it's going to just grow wild. These are all things that you got to be looking at. You got to look at every little thing. There's some patio furniture over there for no reason, except that I didn't really have room for it elsewhere. That's going to have to be weed eated around. And if you really look, there's some horseshoe stakes. If you hit those with a lawnmower blade, you're going to be screwed. This is all stuff that you got to be aware of. So you might be asking, how much would I bid on this property to mow it? And I'm not going to tell you, because everybody's price is different. I've said that a few times on previous videos, and it's true. If this were a 4-man crew coming out here, they're going to knock this out in probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes. You'll have 2 guys on the weed eater, maybe 2 on the lawnmower. You'll have one of the weed eater guys finish up and start the blower. If you're doing hedges, you'll have a guy get off the lawnmower and tackle the hedges. It's going to be a well-oiled machine, and you guys are not going to be here more than 1 hour. If you're a solo operator, this is going to take you minimum 2 hours. And I know that because I do it on my own. It takes me about 2 hours, and I'm pretty good at mowing. So these are all things that you're going to have to figure out. You have to figure out what your hourly rate is. How much do you need to make per hour? Not me, not the next guy. You should never worry how much the next guy is mowing it for. It doesn't matter. As long as your price is what you need to make a profit and make a living, then it is the correct price. It doesn't matter how much Juan is going to be charging, or the guy with the brand new fleet up the road. It just doesn't matter. Just focus on you. So you're almost ready to go back to the front door and give the customer their quote, except you still have a few question marks that you need answered first. The creek, are they expecting you to work that in and weed eat that? Behind the fence where all those vines are they expecting that to be poisoned or weed eated or mowed? Once you have all of your information, you're going to go back, you're going to knock, you're going to say, I took a look around, I can do the property for X. In my experience, once you give the bid, you need to be ready to do the work that very day. Generally, how it works is that people have a day off, they go outside to have their morning coffee, they look at the backyard and they think, it looks kind of rough, honestly. I'm going to hop on Google and find a yard guy. They found you. You come out, you give them the bid, they trust you, they like the price, they think that you're going to do a quality job, and you say, yeah, I'll come out tomorrow. You're giving somebody else a chance to squeeze in there. They may not have off tomorrow. This may be their one day off for the week. And a lot of times on the first mow, even the second mow, they want to be there to know that you're not going to rip them off or not actually do the work, or that you're not going to steal from them or whatever. So they want to see it. I would recommend always scheduling it to where you have time to do the work the same day. You'd be amazed how many customers you end up losing when you say, I'll come back tomorrow, I'll come back on the weekends. It's a competitive game, and if you're not there to do the work, there's plenty of others who definitely are. Some other issues that you may have people who want to play the haggle game. They want to say, well, I had a guy who did it cheaper last year, or, well, do you have a discount for veterans or seniors? I, I do not haggle price. I have a set price that I need to make. I tell them that. If you called a plumber out, if you called a roofer out, if you called any other professional person out, they would not haggle on price. Yet for some reason in the lawn care game, people feel like our prices are just made up. It's just something that we pull out of thin air. If you're doing this correctly, it shouldn't be. It should be based on math and time. You should have an exact number figured out to know what you need to make to do the property, to make a profit, and to make sure that your bottom line is still covered and you're able to survive for the winter while the customer still feels like they're getting a good value. Uh, I do not haggle price, period. I don't give discounts. I don't say, well, maybe this time, since you got another bid from this other fella and he's going to do it for 65, maybe I can do it for 60. No. If he can do it for less, go with that guy. But that's not the kind of customer base that I'm trying to go for. I'm trying to go for somebody that's loyal, who is going to stick with me for years. So I'm confident about it. I am honest about it. And I know on day one how much I'm going to charge. I never come back later and say, yeah, I kind of screwed up on that bid, guys. I said I would do it for 75, but honestly, it takes longer than I thought, and I'm going to actually have to charge you 95. If you do that, you will lose customers. They lose faith in you. Once they lose faith in you, it's over. So that's pretty much what I have, guys. Hopefully this helps. If you have any more tips about how you do quotes and bids, the main thing is just figure out time. It's all about time. How long is it going to take you to get here, do the work, and get out? It's always time. Your hourly number is going to be different than mine or the next guy or the next guy. Just figure that up and you should be set. It gets easier with time. It gets easier with more experience. As you do this, by the end of this season, if this is your first season, by the end of this season, you should be almost a pro. It's not that hard, but you do want to nail it because it can cost you money in the end. All right, guys, until the next time, see ya.